Hi everyone, I'm Sedha Akhtar and thanks for joining me today on Shama Women's Centre's Mindfulness and Meditation sessions on their online programme. And as usual, this programme is delivered on a Tuesday and Friday and uploaded onto Shama Women's Centre's Facebook and YouTube channels, so why not drop them a follow or a like? So last week I spoke about how to cultivate happiness into our lives. We explored the nature of happiness and I showed you different ways to boost happy emotions. Now, if you missed last week's session, feel free to scroll through this page and take a look. But today we'll look at ways in which we can cultivate joy. So, first, let's define joy. One definition is joy is a feeling of great happiness and suggests that somehow joy is a stronger emotion to happiness. Psychologists' views on happiness and joy go into a bit more detail. They suggest that happiness is a positive emotion that is caused by external conditions being just right, whereas joy is a positive emotion generated deep from within ourselves. Now, because joy is cultivated internally, it can be more consistent than happiness. Some even refer it to as a state of actual being or an approach to life, rather than just an emotional reaction to a situation like happiness. Is there really a difference between happiness and joy? Well, this is an interesting question. We're often asked the question, are you happy? Not, are you joyful or are you filled with joy? It's always, are you happy? Well, this is a great question, and for anyone to answer that question, they don't immediately think, well, I will be happy if I win the lottery or pass my exams. There's always that split second where we internally ask ourselves the question, am I really, truly happy? Try it. Next time somebody asks you, are you happy? There's always that split second where we search deep from within. Some people may mention a feeling of joy, that deeper inward feeling, if they follow a particular way of life or methodology for spiritual or religious practice, or perhaps no religious practice at all. And at the end of the day, it's totally up to you what you follow and what positively brings you joy deep from within. You can find happiness and joy through whatever form you choose, or none, if that's what is suited for you. So think about when you've come across someone who said, I'm overjoyed, and straight away we know that this expression comes from deep within rather than just a reaction. So today we're going to explore having a life filled with both happiness and joy at the same time. Experiencing a more fulfilled life means you want both happiness and joy and lots more of them both, and who wouldn't? Everybody wants to be happy and everybody wants to feel that inner joy. So let's explore a few ways of how to create both. The lovely thing about joy is that it's a skill that you can learn. It's founded on knowing and accepting who you are and making peace with yourself. That peace can then be extended to others. Joy also requires a strength of belief that happens when our actions are consistent with our beliefs. So, it's really important that we treat ourselves with care. Pay attention to the way you talk to yourself, perhaps. Just notice if you're harsh or critical, and many of us are. We tell ourselves negative things that we'd never say to another person. You're useless, you're ugly, you're worthless, you're incapable. Yet, why do we allow ourselves to embed these false beliefs into our lives? Treating ourselves kindly takes practice. At first, that first step, staying mindful of self-talk and self-judgment. So, from today, I'd like to try something. Why not just notice and observe how you talk to yourself, how you refer to yourself? Do this for about a week and just contemplate on the words you choose and use towards yourself. Be patient whilst you engage in this practice. Then, after a week, I'd like you to notice this pattern again, but this time, be patient and compassionate and kind towards yourself. Kindness begins with positive self-talk. So, as soon as you hear yourself say something unkind, just pause, think, and say to yourself, no, that's not true. Instead of criticising yourself, and be honest with yourself. I'm not stupid, for example. And don't focus on what you can't do, but focus more on what you can do, what you are able to do. Such as tell yourself the next time you have a negative thought or say something negative, straight after say, you know what, I'm good at cooking, or I enjoy running. I like making others smile, for example. So just be kind to yourself and don't give yourself a hard time. And learn to slowly tell yourself that you deserve better treatment. Compassion comes in when you begin to allow yourself to be less than perfect. We don't have to be perfect, nobody is perfect. If a friend forgot to call you, for example, you'd probably cut them some slack. You might realise that something might have come up to distract them, for example, and you might forgive them for making a mistake, perhaps, because you know nobody's perfect. So, why don't we start treating ourselves in the same way? You'll begin to treat yourself more with compassion, and it's important that you do because just as you would treat others with compassion. Patience with ourselves is important as we can begin to use this time for self-reflection. Being patient and learning to apply self-compassion is a valuable skill because it takes time and practice to overcome internal negative thoughts. It's also good practice to begin to acknowledge our shortcomings, and we all have them, every single one of us, and accept them and move forward rather than getting stuck in the past and worrying about the past. Because the simple fact is the past has gone. And what really matters is the present, the here and now. When our actions align with our values, our inner values, there's a lot less to be self-critical about, and that in turn will allow us to take time to become more positive towards ourselves. And it all starts with beginning to know ourselves better. Learning who we are and what our values are is the first port of call. Just think for a moment, how much time do we actually spend taking the time out to learn what our values are? Perhaps it's something you can engage in the coming week. Connecting with others is important too. Research suggests that social connection gives us a sense of belonging, a feeling of self-worth and a sense of security. But it's important to note we're talking about meaningful connections, in fact. Not connections we make and they may not be as meaningful as we think, or they may not be that beneficial for us. And it's really important that we live in the present, not in the past or worry about the future. Constant anxiety takes us out of the moment, out of the here and now, and prevents us from focusing on the present. And the present is where the change happens, the magic happens. But we're often forgetful of this because, especially now, we're going through difficult times with the multiple lockdowns and everything else. But take each day as it comes, each moment as it comes, and don't put pressure on yourself because we'll get through it together. When we live in the here and now, we become more mindful of what is going on right now. And this is the focal aspect of living with cultivating more happiness and actual real joy into our lives. Spending our emotional energy, for example, worrying about the past and worrying about the future, or focusing on other people's lives, keeps us from experiencing the peaceful happiness and joy-filled state of being in the here and now. Just consider that happiness and joy are always available and within grasp only if we begin to shift our mindset and perspective more from a negative perspective to a positive perspective. Now, not all of us live a life filled with happiness and joy, and perhaps it's because we've placed our expectations on other people and based our reliance on them. And then those expectations are not met, and we can be plunged into sadness. Pushing back into the negative frame of mind or negative mindset is something that can turn into a vicious cycle. So let's try to move forward and focus on the present. So next time you start worrying about the past, just say to yourself, the past is gone. What is important now is the present. Because often we can set ourselves up for disappointment when we base our own happiness and joy on other people fulfilling our needs, should I say. Yet, why do we do this? Why do we put ourselves through something like this? Now, if we learn to let go, we're much less likely to be disappointed or let down. Far too often, we perhaps choose to think about everything we don't have instead of everything that we do have. Our mind then resides in that negative mindset, and this overflows into our lives, and we simply no longer are able to empty our stress bucket. So, being grateful about what we do have, it doesn't matter how small it is, even if we bring it back to basics. I have a roof over my head, I have food on my table, or I have central heating, or I have heating. Not everybody does. And if you don't, perhaps the fact that you're be able to walk, or you're able to see somebody down the road, or anything that works for you, it doesn't have to be big, because everybody's gratitude is going to be different according to our lives. Find your passion. What is it that really excites you, that gives you long-term contentment? Think about what your passion may be. And if you don't know, perhaps it's a good time to start searching for that passion, that real joy. For me, it's about doing what I'm doing right now. I'm passionate about helping people to become better versions of themselves. It literally brings me a feeling of joy, and I feel it's what I was made for. So find your passion, find your joy, and live the life that you want to live. Many people have found success in finding their passion and creating a life filled with more happiness and joy through different ways. Some through meditation, some through healthy lifestyles, or spending more time for themselves, or perhaps engaging in other practices. And it's really important that you find what's good for you. And for some people, calming meditation or even prayer can also be helpful in allowing more happiness and joy into their lives, no matter who you are or what you do or what you believe in. Perhaps you already engage in a meditative form of practice in a spiritual or religious aspect, or maybe you have your own method. It can simply be a place to start or develop in whichever way that you choose. You may or may not have spiritual or religious beliefs that suit you, and that's fine. You should use whatever works for you. You simply need to add this time of calming the mind and creating that inner peace to your daily routine. However, for those that have no idea where to start and need some form of calming practice and a place to start, we can focus our attention on meditation, like we've been doing over the last few weeks, or focus ourselves on positive affirmations that we say to ourselves every day before we start our day, or perhaps going for a mindful walk, or just standing and observing the trees or the birds, or observing something in your home perhaps. Meditation can help us discover what goals or tasks are truly important to us and which ones we can set aside, because our mind becomes relaxed and we have that space to process and think and become creative. Having a life filled with more happiness and joy certainly requires the ability to be able to say no to things we don't want to do or know how we don't, and things we don't need to have in our lives. So remember, being successful doesn't mean being constantly busy. Focusing on the right tasks and the right goals is really important than simply keeping busy with things that aren't helping us realize our true passion or creating that real joy in our lives that we long for. So go out there and find your passion. And it's a path of, it's an inward journey that we all have, and everybody should, life is there for us to enjoy. It's not meant to be hard. And sometimes we're put in really difficult situations, but find your passion, find your thing, and then you will begin to realize a sense of joy and happiness come into your life. Learning how to live with more happiness and joy and peace requires a constant and dedicated search and connection to our hearts, our body, and our minds, or soul as well. Uniting all these will make you a powerhouse of joy. Learn to let go. It's really important. We need to break away from the shackles of our past. These shackles are holding us back in so many ways. It's just that we can't always see those shackles. Remind yourself that the past has gone and there's nothing we can do about it. Think for a moment about people who've gone through unimaginable things in their lives. Perhaps you're one of those people. Perhaps it's somebody you know or heard about, but somehow are able to come out on top or begin to move forward with their lives, perhaps. The reason is perhaps they've just let go. They've realized they have shackles around them. They've identified them and they've begun to release them so they can move forward in their lives. And they've worked and worked on finding their real selves, their real passion. Have you ever noticed that when you give something to someone with love or passion, you experience the same emotions as they do? And this happens because emotion is energy in motion. Our emotions, our energy is contagious. So when we talk to a close friend, perhaps who's depressed and down, what do you think happens to our energy levels? Well, for a start, they drop. We feel mentally and emotionally exhausted, physically drained, yet the person leaves feeling full of energy. That's happened to me in the past, and it can happen to anybody, and perhaps you're listening to this and nodding away. But out of compassion, we give them a shoulder to cry upon, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, being there for people. But just make sure you give yourself time to recharge your own internal batteries, your own internal light, so you can carry on charging yourself with positive energy and helping people if you need to. And notice what happens when we're feeling over the moon about something and tell our friends and families about it. They usually start to get excited with us, even though they may not have any idea about what we're talking about. Again, it's that transfer of positive energy. Learning to live with more happiness and joy is very simply up to us alone and no one else. As individuals, as humans, we need to take the steps that are necessary in our lives that allow us to keep us on that balance in terms of all aspects of our lives. Let go of the past. Drop those shackles that are holding you back. Find your passion, find your joy. And when we choose not to allow ourselves to become attached to the outcomes of situations or what other people think of us or make us feel, a sense of happiness and joy will begin to fill our lives. And we'll become more stronger within and more inclined to being joyous and happier in our lives. It's all about finding those things that make you happy. And we need to allow people and situations to enter and unfold in our lives as they will, but learning something from them and protecting yourself and allowing yourself to flourish under your terms. Life is about learning to become a better person inside and out. Life is about finding our happiness or finding our passion, finding our goal, finding who we really are ultimately. And we can't measure our success in life against other people's lives. Comparing our lives to others is not the way forward, because all it does, it can give us, it can put us in a place that promotes negative thinking. But what we can focus on is being the best version of ourselves possible. Knowing how to live with more happiness and joy is within reach for every one of us, regardless of life circumstances. I'd like to leave you with a quote by Rumi. Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the bough of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It pulls up the rotten roots so that new roots hidden beneath have room to grow. Whatever sorrow shakes from your heart, far better things will take your place. I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I look forward to joining you next week, and have a lovely weekend. Take care.